This is your crash course into Photoshop, as I promised. We are looking at making selections and masking to remove backgrounds. You'll need this information for both your poster design project um, and your Photoshop monster assignment that you'll be masking and removing backgrounds to create. Okay, so let's look at the basics. So there are really only a couple of things that you need, a couple of tools. One, you'll definitely need to use your layers panel. I'm going to pull that out here. The layers panel will help because I'm gonna make a couple of layers. But then really we're looking at using a brush tool and some of these selection tools here. Um, so to start, I always like to duplicate my layer so I have an extra layer just in case. So what I'll do is I'll click, drag, and drop right here. And so now I have two of the exact same thing. So 1 and 2. And I'll turn off the bottom one so that it doesn't get messed up. If I make a mistake on something, I always have this bottom layer as my starting point. And so here's layer 1, and we can call this selection 1. And here in this selection layer, what I want to do is I want to show you a really easy way to get started. And so that's letting Adobe do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So Photoshop has some pretty cool abilities. So here in this selection tab, so there's a couple of different selection tools that are really useful. So right here, and specifically we're going to do the subject select, but the select and mask is something we get into as well. So I'm going to show you this subject select first. So subject select here. And if you notice, it puts the marching ants on my subject. So this is Hayden, and Hayden is immediately selected. Now here's the cool thing. If this wasn't that important to me and I wanted to be done really quickly, I could click on my masking tool here, which puts a mask immediately onto my original subject, my selection 1 layer, and it really masks them pretty quickly. And that could work. I'm just going to zoom in here, and you'll notice on the shoes here it's a little messed up. I'm just going to scrub around. You'll notice some of these edges aren't that clean, and some of the edges are really harsh. They're edgy. Look at his hair up here is a little messed up. You've got a little bit of green in his hair there, if you see that right there. So yeah, that's an easy way to get started, but it's also not perfect. So I'm going to undo that. And with my subject selected, instead of immediately going to a mask, I think what I'd like to do is get into a refinement. So a select and refine. So if I select any of my selection tools over here, so these are my selection tools. Here is a rectangular selection tool. We've got a lasso tool. We've got a quick select tool. Any of these tools right here or any of the tools underneath here can work. As soon as I click on one of them, I'll have this select and mask option up here in this top bar. I'm going to click that because now I'm like in this new panel. This new panel here allows me to choose how I want to see it. I can see it on onion skin, which I like to do. And it allows you to select how opaque the background is. So it can be clear all the way to solid. Somewhere around 20 or 30% is how I like to start. Actually, maybe more like 20. So I can see a little bit better on the edge here. And the thing that I want to look at is I like to do this smart radius edge detection. So smart radius, and I do typically 1 to 2 pixels, and that's looking at the edge all the way around the edge. And it's doing what's called a smart radius, where it's basically looking at pixels and saying this pixel should be in the selection, this pixel should be out of the selection, and trying to make it so that the pixels that don't go in or out don't contaminate the other pixels. So that's the first spot right there. Secondly, I typically don't smooth a lot, but I do feather it, at least a pixel or two of feathering, and that will, and let me see if I can zoom in here, that will soften this edge here, or soften the edge. You can see specifically like on his shirt, and so if I don't feather it, it looks like this. Look at that edge is pretty harsh there, and if I do feather it out, maybe 2.5 pixels, it softens that edge a little bit. Maybe that's too much. Maybe I want to do 2. And I am quite zoomed in now, so I'll zoom back out. 2 pixels. Good, so far so good. Typically, I will shift the edge in about -5%, and I will decontaminate the colors, 100% decontamination. So far, that looks pretty good. Now, let's look at one spot, his hair here, that is messed up. Let's try this. There is a little deal here. This is a refine edge brush. I'm going to click on that, and there's a refine hair button when I click on that. Let's see if that fixes it. It didn't fix it still. Okay, so we're going to bring this brush in, and we're just going to brush this edge here. Maybe. And it did not like that. Let's try that again. Let's try the quick select brush. I'm going to try that instead. So I'm going to do this quick select brush here to get some of the selection to happen here. There. And now refine edge brush along that edge. Oh, it does not like that hair spot. I think maybe we fixed it there. It's hard to tell in this view. I think it might be fixed there. What that edge refinement does is it looks at the edge here. So this edge refinement looks at the edge as long as I brush it along this edge, and most of this is pretty good already. So I think it's looking at it and thinking, oh, it already looks pretty good. So, okay. Once I have all of that stuff done here, you can decide how you want to do this. I like to output it to a new layer with a layer mask. Hit OK. And now we're going to see that in Photoshop. And you can see there is some mistakes in here. I'm going to zoom in on this a little closer. Oh, it messed up his hair a little bit here. Messed up his ear a little bit there. I think that edge refinement kind of messed it up. Let's look at the mask. So what am I looking at? Well, so I'm looking at this. I'm doing an option click. That shows you where the black is. So the black is what covers up the background, and the white is what reveals. You can see there's a little bit of black here in his ear, this gray here and here. And so there's a simple solution. If I click on this here and get my brush tool here, and I want to paint with black, so I just click this button here. There's black in this box here, white in this box here. Black is on top, so I'm going to paint with black, but don't paint on this image space. Paint on this mask here. And so, oh, I'm sorry. I meant white because I want to paint to reveal his hair. So I am going to click X right here, so the white is on front, because black conceals and white reveals. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. So I want to paint with white on this mask here into this space here. You can see that. Make a smaller brush so you can be more detailed. And I'm just painting it back in, and I'm painting his ear in here carefully. Now my brush is really soft, and I'm going to start with a soft brush out here, but at some point I'm going to need to make that brush a little harder in order to blend the edges. So here, just getting those little edges in there. And then I'm just going to harden this just a little bit, maybe 20-30%. and brush in a little more so it's not quite so fuzzy. So I'm looking at his ear here and it's looking a little wonky. I'm going to hit the X key, and the X key is going to flip from black to white. I'm sorry, from white to black. And now I'm going to tighten up that selection right there. Might need to make a smaller brush. That was nice. Nice. Looks pretty tight there. And with this black brush, I am going to make it bigger and remove here. So I'm just cleaning this up out here. Pretty good overall. Pretty good selection. And I like what I'm seeing here. I want to maybe save this. This selection could be saved really quickly. So file, save as, and I want to save this as a PDF so that I can put this. So I'm going to put this into my Creative Cloud files, and here in the graphics class, add a new folder for your poster design if you haven't already. So and here, keep it as a Photoshop document so that it can be placed into Adobe InDesign. You can name it whatever you need to name it to remember here. This is Hayden Davis, PSD file, save, okay. Now that's ready to be placed into my poster. Okay, let's look at a second example here. So yeah, we could do the subject select again, so select subject. That would be an easy way to get started, but I want to show a couple other things. So here is a quick select tool. The quick select tool works pretty well, especially when you don't have a lot of perfect things. So for example, I can click and drag, and as I drag, it's going to add because I have this add button selected. It's going to continue to add to it. If I switch to the minus, then as I click and drag, it removes. I like to do the add, and then I use my option key. So if I click and hold my option key, I can remove like this. So adding to the selection, subtracting the selection with the option key. Pretty easy to do. Okay. Now you could also do a Command D for deselect to remove it. Here you can do a rectangular selection, right? So it just selects a giant rectangle. You can click underneath here and do an elliptical selection. So if I wanted to select his eyeball, right? So I would zoom in and come in here and do an option click drag. Select an eyeball. That's a perfect selection, right, of his eye. Okay, good. Here you have a magic wand selection, which is pretty basic. It's straightforward. As you click, it selects all like tones and colors. It's on a point sample that you can adjust the tolerance to make more selection or less selection, etc., etc. And then you have the object select. This, I don't know if this will work really well here. Let's see what happens. If I do this, it's going to look at his face and say, hey, you want to select his face, so we will. So that's what that does. Pretty nice, nice quick selection. The lasso tool does a selection as well. So the lasso tool, if you hold the option key, it'll subtract the selection. If you hold the shift key, since I already have his face selected, let's just say I wanted to add his neck to that selection, I could use my lasso with the shift key held down and drag here and here, and oh, I messed up a little there. Here, and that's going to add to the selection. You notice I messed up on the collar, so you could hold the option key and redraw that and cut that out and cut that out and maybe add here. And you can see how this would become a pretty good selection eventually. We could make him into a floating head like this. Pretty nice. Alright, good. So once you have these selection tools available to you, the idea would be that any one of these selection tools, so let's just say I selected his eye like I showed before, right? And I masked it. Well, now I'm just going to have a tiny little eye there, right? So if I wanted to make multiple selections, I could select all different things and put them on different layers here, or use my mask to only cover up part of this and then save it and then bring it into my poster design. Good. That should cover what you need to do to make the selection. The biggest key that I want you to get from this, and let's do this selection of his face again. So if I have his face selected here again, and the thing I want you to start to understand is that once you've made the selection and you've made the mask, is that this mask is what's making it, it's hiding the selection. So this is what that mask looks like. So it's hiding, the black hides everything that's behind it, and the white reveals it here. So his face shows through in that white area. And I can just take a brush and paint with black or white on the mask. I have to be selected on the mask here and paint, and I can cut more out, or X, and now I'm painting with white and I can reveal more, right? So I could reveal more of his background or his shirt or whatever. Good. I hope this was helpful for you. You are welcome to message me in the Google Classroom or email me if you have any questions. Thanks for listening. Good luck.